Welcome to my discussion on youth baseball players, warm-up and prehabilitation. Something to think about, consider in the warm-up. We want to make sure that we preserve their fine motor movement. Baseball is such a high-skill sport. We want to make sure that we don't do anything that's detrimental to that in the warm-up process, so we don't want to overdo it. Also, it is an anaerobic sport. Think about rapid acceleration, deceleration, dynamic range of motions for upper and lower extremities. One thing that makes baseball sort of unique is a lot of rotation that happens around the thoracic spine. Also, keep in mind it is agility and decision making. There's a lot of decision making in baseball, and so we want to try to incorporate some of that if we can into our warm up. We think about the extra throwing mechanism involved, more shoulder and elbow possibly than some other sports. The general warm up, as the book mentions, I won't read it to you, but basically talks about increasing aerobic activity just a little bit, getting the heart up, increasing the core temperature, perspiration, joint viscosity. You want to loosen up just a little bit, and I put the reference there at the bottom. But in reality, your general warm-up is going to be 1 to 2 minutes. Most people aren't going to do a 5-minute general warm-up, especially for youth sports. I think 1 to 2 is back. I put a couple examples in here. Base jogging, it's a great team concept. Just go in a circle one direction. The leader stops. Everybody does a quick high five. They switch directions back around. That's going to be a general 1 to 2 minute. Additionally, you could go to the outfield and back. I don't really cue this or coach this a whole lot, but I get the kids ready mentally to participate in practice. A great acronym from the textbook as well. We start with raise and then we end with potentiate, but basically we're just gradually ramping it up, getting ready to perform the activities for the day. Here's an example of arm swings. Here's an example of arm swings with a little more thoracic rotation, although not in the textbook. I like this very well because it does have a little more application for baseball with the throwing and the swinging of the arms, and then also batting and trunk and the movement that they're going to do. And these are marches, or Frankensteins is actually what we call them in our facility. Pretty simple. Thing over coach is we don't want to see a lot of rounding in the back, and kick will play out one more time. Pretty simple maneuver. We're moving on to the lunge walk. We want to make sure that I like 90 degrees there. That's better right there than what we saw before. Also want to make sure that he's not rounding that back or leaning forward. A lot of athletes will overreach with the waist. So that's not bad example. And this is lunge walk with rotation. Okay, go ahead. Yep. So big coaching points is keep an upright chest. Yep. Rotate kind of nice and easy into that spot. Don't kind of jerk it or rush it too much. Okay, go ahead. Yep. Pretty simple. This is an example from the textbook. You tell he doesn't do these a whole lot. Now, what's funny, interesting, he's an Olympic lifter, and you notice how rigid he is in the center there, right? But see, we want him that way for that sport, but for baseball, he's not very athletic for that. So it's a good example, really, of what happens when you train an athlete specifically for something. Go ahead. Okay, so this is our walking knee lift. Pretty self-explanatory. The big errors that you'll see is the contact leg with the ground has a tendency they'll bend that knee if they're tight in the hip. As you can see, he's tight in his hips. And so he doesn't necessarily do this one the best. It's simple. So the downside is we have 80 kids on a field, or football or baseball rather, 25 kids, however many you're going to have. This is something you really need. Otherwise, we're wasting our time here. We want to make sure that we're doing it correctly. Something I really think goes underappreciated is skipping and the value of skipping. There's so many variations of skipping. I could do 12 minutes, 10 minutes. I'm trying to keep this brief, 10 minutes on just skipping. But this is more of a sprinter type of skip where he's trying to do a minimal ground contact time and then just really pump that arm up. But that's a great example of many variations of skipping. I'm sure someone else has done this or made this up. I made this up. I've not seen it anywhere. But I call it skipping with a scoop. And basically for my baseball kids, I'll have them do a couple of these. Just get them kind of ready for what they're going to do, which they do catch ground balls and they do different kinds of things. And, we'll gradually let them loosen up and throw some rotation in there, all kinds of variations on this. This is something else that I think goes underappreciated in baseball because we have so much change of direction. This is more of a football drill, but I like it for my baseball kids as well because they have to react and watch and pay attention to what's going on. And that's just like baseball. They have to react, they have to shuffle, they're going to have to backpedal maybe, they're going to have to turn and run. There's so many variations of these that we can do for baseball.
Good job.
Okay. So rounding that out with total warm-up, then what we're going to do, and I didn't video it, but you get the idea. Once we round out that general warm-up, then we move to specific warm-up, and then we're going to kind of do a skill warm-up, if you will, and that's similar movement to the sport. We're going to get guys on knees and throwing and catching. We're going to field the ball. We're going to get down dirty with the ball, maybe do some dives, some different kinds of things. And that entire process from start to finish is going to be 10 to 20 minutes. The book will tell you that it's more realistic for 10 to 15. And so I think about that in the whole process. I like to talk the latest and the greatest and the newest, even for youth, but still, you see a lot of people using weighted balls or lighter baseballs or weighted bats. The jury's kind of out on that. I did some research beyond the scope of this discussion post, but found some research that was really neat on velocity in baseball seemed to be promising, but isometric holds in the back part of the swing, like you see this player here, against an immovable object has showed promise in the literature for improving velocity of the bat. And quickly, I wanted to go over my evidence-based prehabilitation. I was really happy when I saw this page in the textbook, and I've been doing it this way for a better part of 20 years, so it's nice to see it in research, just stuff that I picked up in Cairo school, but it just made more sense to me. And so I've always stretched following practice, and also as a separate session. I mean, to me, it makes more sense. Otherwise, we're going to rush through it. And I think these things are important. They need to happen, but at the same time, it should also be part of your weight room strength and conditioning facility so we can preserve as much time on the field for doing things that we need to do on the field. These were taking from the Yokohama Baseball 9 protocols, which showed a decrease of musculoskeletal injury following these interventions. So these are the 9 stretching exercises. What I would do is have them do the dynamic stuff and general warm-up that we walked you through earlier on day 1. Then say the second day of practice, I'd have them do the general warm-up, a different general warm-up, and then I would have them go through these protocols. And then the next day do the repeat. And so there's some studies in the literature, you don't have to do the exact same warm-up every single day or the exact same stretch. Obviously we get a little bang for our buck, so we can spread that out just a little bit. And this would be one of my prehabs. Now I would be cautious about calling this strengthening. The research does call it strengthening. I'm not so sure about that. To me, it just looks a little bit more like the dynamic stuff that we were doing earlier. So again, I would make this my protocols on the off days, and the other ones that we already went through on the slides, the protocols on the on days, so to speak. And so that we're mixing up, kids get a good variety and no one's getting bored with it. And here is my reference slide. And thank you very much.